Okay, well, welcome back. If you can make your way up front, there's plenty of seats. So that was a very exciting morning. I learned a lot. You know, one of my personal themes is that we're always talking about, man and machine and how technology is impacting the ability for humans to do things better. And my colleague, Steve Smith, who helped program this and should be up on the stage and doing a more professional job than I am, he couldn't be here because he had a medical problem that required him to not be online and be traveling and mainly not being on computer screens, which is a problem since he's one of our best and most prolific writers. So he's actually just emailed me and said that he's playing around with some voice transcription software to see if he can write stories that way. And I said, well, you should write about that experience. And he said, yeah, well, but my first drafts always had profanities in it. So keep in mind, he did send me an email, so he was on his screen writing. So, but I want to thank Steve for helping to organize this. And I think mainly because the morning we focused so much on media and content and the Facebook exchange, we want to talk about the broader world of marketing and how it's being impacted by programmatic technologies and things like the RTB marketplace. Because this is not, nothing's in a silo in this industry. Everything affects everything else. And I believe that we're moving from an era of programmatic exchanges and RTB into a whole suite of technologies that are going to transform the way people market to consumers. If you get a chance, get a copy of Debbie Aho Williamson's report from eMarketer, which just came out. She does a really good job of talking about some of the changes going on, particularly with creative and dynamic versioning. It's not just media, it's the whole process. So to lead the conversation and kick off the afternoon, I'm going to turn it over to one of our trusted friends of MediaPost, Cory Treffiletti, who's certainly been part of the family as long as I've been here, which is a long time, I hate to say. Cory, I got to know him first at Cara, where he was the digital wizard and wunderkind, and more recently, he's the CMO of bluekai, which is, in my opinion, one of the companies that's really now enabling the infrastructure for all this stuff to go on. But it's not your pitch, I'm just saying. You're doing a great job.
Thanks anyways.
So I'd like to turn it over to Cory to introduce his panel and get on with the discussion.
Thanks, Joe. All right. So welcome back from lunch. I hope everybody is well rested, well fed. And if you start to fall asleep, just raise your hand and we'll call on you and we'll ask you a question and keep you engaged in the whole discussion. It's a real-time panel. All right? So the question that we want to talk about a little bit is from real-time bidding to real-time marketing culture. And I'm not going to read the description. You all have it in front of you. I'm sure you've read it a couple seconds before Joe started talking to make sure you were in the right room. Fundamentally, we started to talk about this question on the phone recently, as well as prior to walking in the room here. And it's a really interesting question because you start talking about agencies and you start talking about marketers, and you start to wonder, really, is real-time marketing a viable opportunity? Is it something that can actually come to pass? Can we get to a stage where, not just in digital, because I think that we're proving in digital there's a lot of opportunity for doing real-time marketing, but across other platforms? Is it possible that the agency of the future is really a big Bloomberg desk? Is it possible that the agency of the future is more than just real-time bidding, but is it real-time creative development? Is it real-time analytics? Is it really moving into a much more fast-paced, much more reactive opportunity set? So what we're going to do is talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to quickly introduce our panel. Starting with, on my left, we have Adam Kleinberg, who's the CEO of Traction. And then next to him, we have Marcus Pratt, who's the Director of Insights and Technologies for Mediasmith. He's also been on every panel today. Okay, 2. And then we have Nicole Rawski, who's the Manager of Analytics at JWT's Digitaria. So I'm going to start with Adam. Adam, what's your reaction to the idea of a real-time marketplace? How does that apply to the business that you offer in the agency business?
Yeah, Traction is primarily a creative-focused agency. A lot of media comes through, but we tend to work with partners in the execution of buys. But we're really looking at today thinking really hard about how do we evolve our processes as an agency to kind of accommodate the needs of of a real-time marketing culture. We're doing a lot of content marketing that needs to be opportunistic. There's things that are popping up every day that are becoming cultural memes that are opportunities for brands to take advantage of. And while I still think that campaigns are a big, important, valuable piece of the overall marketing puzzle, it's now in parallel in importance to content and to being able to be nimble and take advantage of those opportunities in real time. Like the old model of takes 3 months for me to put a piece of creative out the door. There's still a place for that, when doing a brand campaign, but that's the exception, not the rule today.
Marcus, how's it applying to the world that you guys live in?
Yeah, so Mediasmith is a independent media agency here in San Francisco. So we're, unlike Adam, we're not creating ads. Obviously, we're always partnered with a creative agency. But on the buying side, we're certainly leveraging RTB. But I see that more as an executional thing. We can have a campaign that we've planned out 6 months in advance that has an RTB component. But we're seeing just an overall shift in expectations. I think our own expectations and our clients' expectations. Weekly reporting, monthly reporting used to be kind of the norm. Now, from an analytics standpoint, a lot of clients are asking for daily or even, real time. Like, hey, my campaign launched an hour ago. How's it doing? So I think that we're seeing just that shift happening in the media landscape. People want things done faster and faster. We'll get RFPs where there's a project that's starting in 7 days from when we've received it, and they want to see a proposal, get a contract done, and start tapping an agency to launch something that's going live in a week. And I think to Adam's point, you would not see that even a couple years ago very often, and now it seems like it's becoming more and more common.
And Nicole, before when we were talking out in the hallway, you had commented that you guys don't do a lot of real-time bidding, but do you operate in an environment where you think a real-time marketing culture can actually exist and can grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So Digitaria is a full-service digital marketing agency, and we definitely are using real-time data to help our clients make informed decisions to optimize performance. This can be specific to media. We do a lot of events with some of our clients where on social media we'll have activity driving conversations from participants and directing them to other audiences or to the other company members so that we can, get real-time leads that way. So that's one way.
So one of the things that was brought up in, I think, maybe 2 or 3 sessions ago was whether or not brand advertisers are involved in FBX and so on and so forth. And my question is, does the idea of real-time marketing, does that apply to brand advertisers, or do we think that's primarily a direct response function for the time being?
I think it applies to brand advertisers, certainly. Does it necessarily imply to how they're going to do a TV spot? Probably not. I mean, with the exception of like a couple of Doritos trick campaigns where we're going to, turn around a TV spot today, or I guess what was it? Chevy's did that a couple years ago where they produced an instant TV spot. Those things still you want quality for a brand, and that takes time and it takes thought and it takes production quality, and that isn't necessarily where a brand needs to focus on being real time, but we need to react as brands and be vigilant, at the speed of conversation. Like I said, opportunities are constantly surfacing, conversations are happening. Developing content in real time. Whether that's visual content, whether it's written content, whatever that is, video, whatever that is, being able to produce that, turn it around quickly, do a quality job, make sure it's still representing the attributes of your brand, and doing that on an ongoing basis is highly important.
I'd say, it depends on how we define real time. So when we talk about real-time bidding, it's milliseconds, and I think from a general marketing standpoint, we're not there. There's still usually human involved with big brand efforts, but you see things that are happening. I think rapid response and quick turnaround marketing is becoming more and more common with large brands. I think it was a year or 2 ago that Old Spice had the YouTube videos that everybody loved, and they would take in questions from people over Twitter actually write a script, film the spot, post it in response, that same day or within a matter of hours. And, that certainly is new, but whether we define that as real time and then something is happening right this second, I don't know. It's a lot quicker than, a 90-day planning cycle, but that was part of a campaign that was planned out and had, I'm sure, months and months, if not more than that, of preparation that went into it, and then some of the execution happens very quickly.
Yeah, so I think real time is pretty fast. I think there's a lot of thought that has to go into what you're seeing from the data and the time that it takes to really get the insights that you're looking for to make those informed decisions. So I think being able to respond as quickly as possible is important. I'm not sure how quickly real time could happen, though.
Recently, one of my articles for MediaPost was specifically about the idea that we've entered into this enterprise phase of marketing, where if you look at every other aspect of business, whether it's sales or CRM or IT and operations and finance or whatever, there's an enterprise solution that enables that division of a business to run more efficiently and to drive higher performance out of its existing services. We've gotten to the stage now where marketing is starting to have enterprise solutions being offered to it. Whether you have companies like Adobe talking about the cloud marketing suite, you have companies like mine, you have a lot of companies that are sitting there offering services into enterprise. Do you think that those solutions, as they start to become more useful, they start to be built together for the marketing stack of the future, do you think that sets us up for an infrastructure so that we can actually act in real time, that we can think very, very quickly on our feet and react to the needs of our customers?
I think it'll be a tool that we'll be able to use, and maybe eventually one day it could take over, but right now there's a human component that I think is absolutely necessary.
I think that you'll see a lot of the biggest mistakes that are made by marketers happen in real time. So having the right tool set is certainly going to be helpful, but also having the right foundation. And there are companies that are helping just consult on, within social media marketing, how to go through an approvals process or how to respond to somebody quickly, but make sure that you don't have, an intern just posting whatever they want on the corporate Twitter feed. And I think that's something that companies are still sorting through. And yes, technology is certainly going to help with those things, but I don't know that it's going to solve the problem 100%. Companies need procedures, and they need an understanding of how they're going to work and how they're going to train their employees to operate within certain guidelines.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's something to this notion of kind of enterprise companies moving into marketing, right, and providing marketing services. And I think it's something that people in the industry haven't really talked about. But you've got kind of this messy Lumascape, right? That's kind of
I thought that was really well organized. Come on.
It is very well organized. That's the whole point of it is that it's taken a massive feat to organize it into all these categories. But you've got all these point solutions everywhere, and then you've got very few players in really the enterprise space. You've got Google, right? That kind of controls a big piece of that across all those categories. But now you've got enterprise level companies like Adobe with Adobe Marketing Cloud who are really coming in and saying, you know what, we bought context optional, we've got the search, the social monitoring, we've got search, we've got a programmatic buying option, we've got an analytics package with Omniture, and we're going to integrate all this. Now, is that going to make us more real time in terms of how we do business, or is that just going to be, I think that just this whole notion of direct response marketing is becoming kind of a business process. Like we were talking out in the hall about, do we even need creative agencies to do direct response marketing? Should we just be doing it all with dynamic creative and just upload your elements into a system and let them slap together the ads in real time? As a creative agency, that kind of makes me want to throw up my mouth. But, at the same time, I think there's real validity to it. I mean, if creative development, especially in the direct response side of the house, and customer acquisition is all about kind of getting these elements together, getting them up as fast as possible, having a machine do that, may be good enough, for a lot of brands. I think there's still bigger opportunities on the branding side for I'll say real creative to be developed. not to disparage automated creative, because I do think there's a place for that in every marketer's toolkit, right? Like, data-driven creative is important, but I think it's also important to invest in the right places and getting the work done.
So, this could be a really boring topic, to be honest with you, right? So we have to try and figure out how to make it more interesting. Is this something that we're only talking to ourselves about? Is the idea of a real-time marketing culture, is that a digital thing solely? Or is it ever going to be able to expand into television, radio, print, outdoor, digital outdoor? Are we just talking to ourselves?
I think there are definitely some moves to try and push that into other areas. And I think just last week I read about a company that's launching a real-time digital out-of-home network. So they are going to try and serve ads in real time into shopping malls and things like that. So what data they have available to them, I don't know, but they seem to want to go towards that kind of Minority Report fashion where they're pulling data off of your cell phone on who you are and where you've been, and well, Mr. Treffiletti, wouldn't you like to come into Macy's and take a look at our fall line of jeans? So some people think it's going to go that way, and we're going to see that across all media. I think for television, it certainly has a long ways to go as far as just the technology of allowing us to insert things in real time, and networks needing to approve it all. And there are some real needs to have human interaction there to make sure that you don't run a pornography ad on the Super Bowl, or something actually probably a lot more tame than that. But they decline advertisers every year. They review ads and they decline people and say you can't run this ad on the Super Bowl, and these are from major brands. So they're pushing the envelope, and somebody's saying no. I don't think you're going to see a machine that's able to make that decision for something that's viewed as that important of a media event.
Yeah, I think that there is a degree of this, are we talking to ourselves, right? And, I'm sure the people in this room are like really focused on maximizing every ounce of efficiency out of our media buys as possible. And that's really important. It's what our clients demand. But at the end of the day, from what I've seen of a presentation, we look at, client looks at a report, digital media, they say, great, we got our click-through rate from 0.06% to 0.07%. Good job, team. How are we going to get to 0.08? And that's kind of the reality of what it looks like, and all this technology and how we do it. And, that's all our business to learn. But there is a degree of it doesn't really matter to the client as long as it's getting incrementally more and more and more efficient.
Any comment? Well, what about to get to the core of it? If we're going to get to a real-time marketing culture, there's two things that are dependent on it. The first is data, which now is obviously a very, very hot topic. And the second is execution. I think we've proven the fact that data can get to real time. You can access, you can manage, you can package, you can build classification, taxonomies of data in real time. That can be done. The execution stage, as you pointed out, Marcus, a lot of it is still being done manually. You can go to a DSP and you set up RTB that way. But the rest of the media, when you're going into doing native ads, or when you're going on to doing the portals, because still people, believe it or not, still advertise on portals, right? Not through RTB. Anything on a more dramatic creative stage, when you're doing page takeovers, et cetera, that cannot be automated right now, or can it? Is that something that we can look forward to?
I don't know if we're going to look forward to it as users. I think some advertisers are. There are companies out there that are creating content automatically right now. So you can go and read an article on a finance site about a company that just reported their earnings, and basically a robot reads through the earnings call transcript, pulls out some of the key facts, and writes it into something that's grammatically correct. Have yet to see a Pulitzer Prize winning robotic article. But certainly, I think that same company is now calling on marketers and saying, "Hey, we can write your, your reporting, your analytics summaries, and pull out the key facts from your data." So when we see the importance of native advertising and content marketing, sure, why not? Let's have a robot go and write something about whatever Beyonce just did, in the news 5 minutes ago, or whatever's trending on Twitter right now. From a CMO's perspective, that might sound great. Hey, I can keep up with this whole real-time marketing thing and have content out there, and I don't need to hire more people. But from a user perspective, is it really going to be worth engaging with? I think there's a lot of pretty poorly written content out there, poorly created content that's done by humans already, and I'm not confident that robots are going to be able to do a better job on the creative side, at least not anytime too soon.
Yeah, so for post-click, you could actually do a lot of targeting-based stuff so that depending on where people are coming from, depending on what type of content they were seeing before, you can easily target them once they arrive on a web property. So I think that's one way that we could definitely be more flexible and learn from those key learnings to continue optimizing that personalized experience.
So after you've already qualified them, you've driven them somewhere, at that point you think that real-time marketing could establish a deeper connection by dynamically serving what they want to see.
Correct. And that takes planning.
So for real-time marketing to actually work, how much more upfront planning is it versus just the standard way of doing things?
I think a lot. I think it takes a lot of planning. I mean, even with programmatic buying tools. I mean, I was talking to a former client of mine from Shutterfly, who brought their media in-house, and then they brought their creative in-house. And she was saying, yeah, we'd like to do more programmatic buying, but all these tools take so much time to ironically use these tools that are robots and set them up properly, and that we don't have enough manpower to operate the robots, which I found ironic.
That's weird.
And I think we see that all the time, especially I think it's
See?
almost exponential the more systems you combine. So we're seeing, the Lumascape isn't getting less crowded last I checked. There are a lot of companies on there. We'll have clients that come to us and they've got, these are our core parts of our technology stack, or we need to incorporate them into our analytics, or, we're using Omniture Test and Target to serve for that post-click experience. We have to work with the client and with each of those technology providers to link up every single one of those pieces. If you're working with a single platform and you're trying to define some rules up front, that's more work to begin with. But if then you have to link 5 different platforms so that the person gets the same exposure, whether they're looking at a display ad or a microsite or searching for something, I think that makes it even more work, because there is no one interface where you can go and set up your real-time marketing campaigns and establish your business rules.
So you think if the business were to continue down this path towards real-time marketing, that actually increases the role for the agencies? I mean, all 3 of you represent agencies, and a lot of people would tell you that if real-time marketing were to happen and programmatic takes over everything, that the agencies get disintermediated, that they're not necessarily part of the solution. But you're kind of saying the opposite, that they become more important.
Well, I'd love to sit up here and say we're all going out of business, just pack up our bags and go home, but I think the role of the agency has certainly evolved over time, and there are always going to be those clients who say, hey, we're going to take it all in-house and we want to do this, and there are companies that are doing a fantastic job of managing things in-house, and I think that will continue, whether it's technology or creative services or media services. But there are plenty of companies out there who say, we want help, we want somebody who's done this plenty of times before. And for us, maybe it's not so much we want somebody who's really good at buying yahoo.com. We don't see that so much in the RFPs that are coming into our agency, but maybe it's somebody who knows how these different technology solutions work together, or how we can set something up that's going to, deliver against our campaign goals, applying this different technology. And we say, oh yeah, we've done something similar like that. We know, how this works, and we're acting more as systems integrators in that fashion, setting up the different pieces of the technology as it relates to somebody's media campaign and that execution.
Does this change the kinds of people that you hire on either side of the business at this point? If you know that the business is headed towards this way, I mean, we're talking about a real-time marketing culture, and culture takes time to change. Does this change with the kinds of people that you hire?
I think, it used to be enough to, and I'm a designer, right? I'm a graphic designer. That's where I kind of got into the business. And, what used to be the way that I would look at a book for a designer, for someone who was creative talent, it was all about the craftsmanship, and just their attention to detail, the way the design. I mean, literally, I would look at a designer's book, their portfolio website, and size them up in 7 seconds flat, right, before to decide if I wanted to talk to them. And today, it's like, that's not enough. Like, just having a designer or a copywriter who kind of sits in that old silo of, this is the way I'm defining my job, it's not good enough. Like, you need to be able to think about, how do all these things work together? How do we think about social? How do we think about media opportunities? How do we take this kind of core idea and bring it to market in all kinds of ways that are going to make an impact on consumers? So I look for that more in people, and not just in my creative people, but really people across the board. And of course, the roles that we're creating, I mean, we're doing a lot of content marketing now, so, you know, content strategy. But, you know, I'm finding, like, content strategy is a great example of, in order to be real time and create content, like, it takes a huge amount of planning and literally, like, a methodology and building spreadsheets from the ground up that are going to, like, you know, regulate and govern how you're going to get content out. And then at the same time, you still have to make the content good for it to be worth producing. So, you know, really, like, I'm looking for people who are just leaning forward and kind of wrapping their head around everything and are just passionate and excited about what's going on, or they just don't fit.
Yeah, so we've actually been doing a lot of hiring lately, and the landscape's just changed. So at Digitaria, we have about 15 analysts on our team, which is a pretty large analytics team compared to most companies. And what we used to do is we used to bring in new people right out of college and train them from the ground up. And what we're seeing as we see applicants is more and more people are coming in with experience in analytics, with experience in search and social, and it's making those candidates definitely more eligible for hiring. And so that helps, you know, it really helps seeing that people coming in to interview for these type of positions are more knowledgeable. So it's already changing.
I think on our end, we're always going to see the need for, you know, a media strategy, and clients are going to want that, an understanding of what their consumers doing, how they're consuming media, and how we can reach them. But so our CEO Dave will talk about the media technology planner, and somebody that maybe doesn't say you're going to run on Yahoo and CNN, because those are really great places to reach your target audience, but somebody who says, here are the 5 different pieces of technology that we're going to apply to your business, that we're going to use to serve your media, to track your media, to, you know, if it's dynamic creative, to integrate with the creative agency's strategy and make sure that the right person gets the right thing, and pull in the bluekai data so that a woman gets this ad and a man gets that ad. And to look at that, because we see it very much as every client's technology needs are different, and every campaign could have different needs. We might not need a particular solution for one campaign, but then for another one, we really have to have this and make sure that we're pulling something in. So we're looking for people that maybe have a little bit of that capability and understand the behind the scenes of how the execution works, and don't just see that as something that ad operations will deal with, or that's purely executional, because more and more that is going to be important at the planning and strategy level, how we're applying technology and which ones we're going to use.
Well, as you're continuing to put that strategy forward, and as you're hiring to fill these spots in the agencies, and as you're starting to build your culture to be different than maybe it has been, we started the day talking about real-time bidding, and that's probably the simplest use case for a real-time marketing culture. What are some of the other use cases that either your customers are looking at or your agency looks at that can help define what real-time marketing culture is going to be like? You talked a little bit about site optimization. We talked about dynamic creative. What are some of the other use cases that would define what real-time marketing culture is?
I think, you look at social media and what people are doing there. Most companies that are heavily invested have somebody, most of the time, or some companies have somebody at all times around the clock, monitoring what's happening, in the world, what's happening with their fans and followers, and responding to them, engaging to them in real time. And sometimes that's more a CRM, right? I can write to the Verizon Wireless and say, my phone sucks, and I'll get a response back from somebody right away, trying to refer me to a 1-800 number or something like that. But more and more, you're seeing that used for marketing. And I think there were, examples around the Super Bowl, talking about what's happening and making so that if somebody's searching for a particular current event and you have an area to align to that, they're going to see you in these social channels. Or if somebody's talking about something, you can appear relevant. So I think it's a great place to do kind of snack level content marketing, where if you're on Twitter, it's only 140 characters. You don't have to have a long planning cycle, but you can get content out in front of somebody that's extremely relevant to what's happening right now?
Yeah, I think it's about integration is really the big real-time cultural opportunity, because all these things like social and content marketing are an obvious, when you say like what's new opportunities for real time, but Oreo made a big splash, right? Because during the Super Bowl the lights went out and they had a crack team and they came up with the most clever way of creating some content, and they bought a sponsored tweet and they did it all in real time. So then you had during the Grammys, you had like every brand had like their crack Twitter team like ready, for, oh my God, Beyonce tripped. Let's tweet something, and that's not going to break through again, So what really matters is looking forward and being like, what is going on here, and how can we really be constantly taking it all in and create new opportunities and be the next Old Spice, be the next Oreo, like do that before it's been done, right? And that takes a team working together and thinking and sharing ideas and really, putting it out there and having a client that's more of a partner than they've been in the past, right? Clients are really smart now, which is a good thing. It's a challenging thing for agencies, but clients are becoming more sophisticated. But I think that gives us an opportunity. I mean, I don't think there's a disintermediation problem. Like, I think clients fundamentally come to agencies because they have challenges, they have problems that need to be solved. Right? And they need objective partners who are going to help them think strategically through those challenges, apply creativity, apply best practices, apply experience, apply technology, and help them solve these problems. I think that there's problems that come and go, right? And where, for example, we look at a lot of brands are taking community management in-house, right? And social. Let them. Like, I was never in the call center business. Like, why all of a sudden, just because it's digital, should my agency be in the customer service business today? That's not what I do. I do advertising, right? So I think, we put big labels on things like this is social, right? Every role in every organization is social today, or it should be, right? Like mobile. It's like saying email, right? We all use email to do our jobs. We all use Excel, right? So there's a lot of parallels there, I think, in terms of not just creating problems that don't exist.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for different real-time marketing things. So all channels, really. I mean, people can come to a site, they can take an action, and they can get a whole new experience than someone who does a different action. I think it's just about being creative. It's being quickly to respond, and it's using data to continue to make informed decisions and to optimize that experience.
So there's two running things. I had actually said a little while ago that real-time marketing culture is a combination of data and execution. And it sounds like I'm kind of wrong on half of that. It's not necessarily about the execution, it's about the strategic planning that's done up front, which is kind of ironic that real-time marketing would depend on thinking ahead a lot. So do you think that, and this is kind of a loaded question, so I apologize for it in advance, but let's look at your category. Let's look at the agency environment. If you had to grade the agencies at this point, just in general, how well do you think they plan in advance to be able to take advantage of a real-time marketing culture? Do you think the agencies in general are doing a good job of strategically planning how to react to their customers, or do you think that they have a long way to go?
I think it's really difficult to group agencies together today in like one lump model. I think some agencies do a great job at that, and I think others don't. Like more traditionally focused agencies that are kind of set in the past and are, struggling to catch on. They're falling by the wayside, right? Like just like a lot of ad networks are falling by the wayside now. You see like anyone who's not willing to change and evolve is going to struggle, and but I do think there's a lot of agencies out there that are really proactively coming up with, for us, it's just like, okay, we need to come up with a new process here. This isn't working, weigh in with our clients. Will this work? We're going to need you to turn around feedback in an hour, not in 24 hours or 48 hours, in order for us to be able to respond. And here's what we're going to do to create content faster or whatever. So I think, giving agencies a bad grade, like, is really kind of, I don't know, it's a loaded question for me.
And I don't think it's only on the agency's shoulders either. I mean, there's a relationship with the brand that's going on, and sometimes that relationship, sometimes the brand just isn't as up to date and current on what's going on, and so you're kind of back at basics and getting them educated to be a little more responsive and quick to respond. So it just really depends.
Yeah, agencies have always been very adaptable, and I think to a large degree we're responding to our clients' needs and the needs of the marketplace, and a good agency should very quickly get feedback on what's resonating and what's not. And when you go in and talk to a client and they don't like what you're saying, it should be part of your culture that you respond to that and quickly. So I think that there is a certain amount of real time that's built in, but I think the sort of negative side of our grade would be a lot of agencies are too reactive. They're going to wait for their clients to come and bring them something and say, hey, really, no, we need that faster. Weekly reporting's not going to work. Or, hey, no, actually, you need to be ready, with your crack team on Twitter, no matter, what time of day it is. And that's when agencies often kick into gear. So I think there could be more planning in terms of getting out in front of that and saying, what else can we offer that hasn't been done before? And frankly, I think to Adam's point, that requires some creative thinking and some of that thought process that doesn't happen in real time, and thinking about how can we do the next big thing or do the next cool thing. It's not going to happen in 5 minutes. It's not something that you can put a process in place and come up with a great idea. I think it does take a little bit of time and some of the more traditional creative work in coming up with a great idea.
Well, do you think this is really where things are headed? I mean, do you really think that real-time marketing is just going to be an aspect of an entire marketing campaign for brands going forward? Or do you think it's going to be a niche of the business?
I think it's going to be a big niche. I mean, I think direct response marketing is going to be entirely, like in that vein of using programmatic buying. I think that there's going to be a degree of offline that's going to be bought programmatically as well eventually once the tools catch up. I think parts of the spot market, right? Like, it's very parallel to the inventory that's in exchanges. And once technology, there's a reason DG bought MediaMind, right? So they can integrate that whole process. I think that, when creative for direct response gets kind of stripped down to how can we do it as cheap as possible, like having branded assets in a library that are dynamically optimized may make sense and maybe a larger and larger part of that DR piece. I still think that great creative is going to make more of an impact, and I think it makes I've seen it, consistently make an exponential impact on the performance of campaigns. So I always do think that there's going to be some tension there, but I think that the social community piece and the direct response piece are going to continue to be more and more embracing and challenged to embrace this kind of real-time marketing culture, but you're still going to have kind of campaigns and digital experiences that are created and the larger pieces of moving pieces of a brand story that brands are going to continue to invest in creating. They should.
I think marketing automation is already here, and it is a huge category. It's a large niche. We've seen investments in technology companies buying into this space because they know that the CMOs are going to be having those large budgets to invest in technology. But what I see on the other side of all that marketing automation is a heck of a lot of people thinking really hard, working really hard, and applying smart strategy to make those tools work for them. So I don't think that campaign planning or that strategic marketing is going anywhere, but you're going to see an increasing amount of the execution being done in real time through more automated tools.
Is it niche? I think it will be niche for a little while, but hopefully it will grow into the overall brand experience, and that's just how it's going to be one day.
So there's a couple running themes, and before we start to wrap up, I wanted to actually just expose them and just get your second thoughts on it. Because my firm belief is that when you come to a session, you should be able to walk away with a couple of headlines that you can actually take and go apply to your day-to-day life. One thing that I heard, obviously, is that brand advertising can take advantage of real time, but it takes a lot of planning. So it takes a lot of planning to think about real time. I also heard that there's a potential in real-time marketing for more mistakes, potentially more mistakes, more decrease in quality, actually, in exchange for relevance and timeliness. And I'm just curious if you think that's actually the case. Do you think we can get to a point where we're not sacrificing quality for relevance?
I think we can, but I think it's going to take that upfront planning and that preparation. I say, if you want to take away, don't confuse real-time marketing with procrastination and lack of preparation and sloppy planning, because putting a campaign together the night before your presentation is due, that's not real-time marketing. That's just being lazy. Being prepared for something and having a strategy and saying, here's how we're going to respond to people in real time or execute in real time, that's real-time marketing, but it takes that upfront planning, and you have to have a strategy going into it.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think there's a definite negative correlation between quality and time. You can squeeze some efficiency, but preparing to do, great work doesn't just happen, right? Like, there's a reason that not anyone can do great creative. It's an intensive process that you go through to ensure quality. I think there's a large part of that process that is based on the back and forth between client and agencies. And I think as we move toward a real-time marketing culture and some of the more content-oriented stuff, maybe trust and some of the walls and some of the, but really a lot of that back and forth is internal at the clients, and them having walls and, layers that they have to go through internally for approvals. So that's what kind of makes a big part of, in addition to the production issues and lining up your strategy, coming up with ideas, executing them well, that takes time. There's also this back and forth with clients. It's a big part of what makes things time intensive, But I do see, like, there are examples of brands really knocking down these walls. I had an experience a couple months ago where Coca-Cola relaunched their website, and they made like a Coca-ColaCompany.com, and they made it a big content portal. And I wrote a post on my own blog, just what I thought of it. And I was kind of critical of it. I was like, great job, they're doing content marketing, but it's still brand centric. It's not. The head of digital for Coke reached out to me on LinkedIn, like 8 hours later, and was like,
"We'll
loved
never
your,
hire you.
Huh?
We'll never hire you," he said.
No, actually, he reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he invited me to write a follow-up post criticizing Coke's website on Coke's website, and he pushed it through.
Nice.
Published it. It was on the front page of Coca-ColaCompany.com, right? Had lunch with him at South by last week. He's like, yeah, you should do another one. Okay. So like Coca-Cola, is tearing down walls and just getting things to market and saying, we're going to kind of take our instinct on what's quality and we're going to run with it. And I think that holds promise for more efficiency. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't think that you can cut, the time it takes from quality. There is an inverse relationship there.
Well, I think you're actually hitting the nail on the head as far as what the big problem is going to be, what the big struggle is going to be, and it is quality versus time. But you actually hit on something, and that we'll probably end on as far as a statement goes. But there's a possibility that real time actually makes us smarter and less lazy, because it puts us through a filter where we are forced to proactively think about the work that we're trying to do and the ways that customers are going to interact with that, and how to utilize the systems that are at our fingertips to be able to execute that way. So it's very possible that you could expose a lot of the lack of strategic planning by looking at a real-time marketing culture, because it takes so much time up front to think through. So hopefully that's the case. If not, then we'll all go back to being really slow and lazy. All right? All right, so I think we're actually it. We're out of time.
Well, there might be questions.
If anybody has a question, we can go a little extra.
Well, let me throw one quick one at you, which is one of the things I'm learning when I cover real-time media and marketing is that there's machine time and then there's human time. And the machines can process data like in hundredths of a millisecond, but people can't really think that way and necessarily apply it that way. One of the best executions I've seen in the past couple of years was Digitaria's LRA crisis tracker. And it was brilliant because you took people data from the field and you used machines to put up on the web in real time to allow people to follow that crisis. So that to me was a great example of man and machine working well together. What do you guys think about applying machine learning data speed in ways that humans can use it and generate better insights?
Well, I think it's a tool. I think it helps. I think it helps improve efficiency. But what you can't get out of that tool is insights and analysis. It can tell you the data. It can tell you what's happening, but it can't tell you what to do next. And that's the most important part of analytics and optimization.
I think some people would disagree. I mean, we see more and more forecasting tools, or sort of the extension of media mix modeling is. Really, I just want the spreadsheet where I put in, all my data, and then it tells me, hey, go spend $10 million on out-of-home, and put this in broadcast, and then we'll take that to a planning tool that tells us what networks to buy. That's not really how people are using these things or how they have, but we are seeing that the tools are getting better and better in providing those kind of if-then scenario planning solutions, or flagging things as, hey, guess what? This is way outside the standard bell curve. And we can flag that for you, and you're going to see it much more quickly than if you had to have a statistician or a PhD go and comb through this data every month or whatever it is. So I think those tools are getting better, but we're still in the infancy, and that most of the solutions that I see, people come in and pitch us on something, and I say, well, how do you know that data is statistically relevant, or do you address that? Usually it's a salesperson on the other end of the table, and they say, oh, well, you can tell that this bar is higher than that one, so isn't that good for you? And that's not really the right answer. So we've got a little ways to go.
Yeah, I think the example you gave is a creative use of data, right? It's how do you creatively apply that? I think a danger that we face as an industry is like if every brand uses the same data, that they bought from Cory, to make the same decisions, like all of a sudden we're like, we're relegated to mediocrity,
Right.
right? And that's really a danger, and it is about insight, not about data. And data can provide insight. It can also provide confusion, right? So, and for me, like, insight's just as likely to come from, and something that hits me in the shower in the morning as it is from a spreadsheet. So for me, it's about understanding what that insight is and wherever it comes from, applying that to the ideas that we're putting out there.
And what's great about the LRA Crisis Tracker is it does what it's supposed to do. If anyone's familiar with Joseph Kony, he's what do you call him?
A warlord.
Thank you. He's a warlord in Africa who is a really bad person. I mean, he turns children into sex slaves and join the military.
What a jerk.
Yeah, total jerk. So this crisis tracker actually helps government officials track where he is and track where he is having these attacks. So in that instance, it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So
If I could just add one little bullet to that, which is, and we can end on that, but the word insight, I feel like, is already kind of getting thrown out our industry like big data is in the same industry. So the other thing I would say is that you can have all the data points in the world, but you have to have humans for storytelling. I don't think it's necessarily about insights as much as it is the ability to weave those things together to tell a story, which is a creative thing. It's close to your heart, right? But the ability to weave a story together, that's really where I think the marketing services organizations still and tremendous value beyond just having platforms like ours and everybody else's ready at their fingertips.
Well, thank you. So I want to thank you all, and thank you twice, Marcus. And we're going to take a quick coffee break. We need to be back in here at 3:15. So thank you for the real-time marketing discussion.
Thank you.
Bye.